Okay, I'm going to reconvene the select board meeting because we did have executive session and we declared before we left executive session that the meeting had been properly warned. So I just want to start with our first order of business. Is the congressman on the line?
Don't see the congressman in the meeting yet.
Okay, well, we'll just carry on until such time as he joins us. Do you think we should do the ratification, Peter, or?
Yes, please.
Okay. Our first order of business would be to ratify the actions taken at our organizational meeting on March 22nd. And for that, I would need a brief motion. Would anyone like to make that motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Tim.
I'll make a motion to ratify the actions taken at the Select Board's organizational meeting on March 22nd, 2021.
Okay, Tim has made a motion to ratify the actions taken at the Select Board's organizational meeting on March 22nd, 2021. All in favor of that motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any noes? Okay, that has passed 5-0, and I would like to introduce to all of us the Honorable Peter Welch, and thank you, Peter, for joining us. We can't hear you.
I said, thank you
Okay.
very much. I'm delighted to be with you. I'm sorry that we're not all together, but you know, that day is coming. The governor says maybe July 4th. So it's been a long, hard haul. But I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about what specifically is in the American Rescue Package for Brattleboro. And let me give a little background on that. As you know, this rescue package, it really mirrors a lot of what we did in the CARES package over a year ago. It provides help to individuals with the $1,400 checks. So a lot of folks in Brattleboro will have received that by now. It continues unemployment benefits through September. It continues the payroll protection plan funds that have been very helpful to many of our small businesses. And of course, it has significant money so that the cost of vaccines won't be borne by local communities or the state. That's a federal responsibility. It also does something very significant for childhood poverty with $300 a month child tax credit. And that is going to be a godsend. And it's estimated that that will reduce childhood poverty by 50%. And that is, as you know, so needed. But there was also a big debate about whether we should include money for the state, for states and for communities. And Senator Leahy, Senator Sanders, and I were all very much in favor of including communities as well as the state. And, you know, in Brattleboro, just what you've had to contend with. You know, that year ago, in a few weeks, the governor declared that national emergency. And what I have vividly impressed in my mind is when I went to the airport to fly back to Vermont after an evening in Washington, the plane was empty. I was the only person on the plane. And the week before, it was totally packed. And of course, when I got home, businesses were closing down, schools were closing down. Parents were trying to figure out what in the world they're going to do to pay their bills. They were trying to figure out what in the world they're going to do about their kids' education. Community leaders like all of you were trying to figure out what can we do about our downtown businesses? What can we do with our restaurants? So we've been through a lot. But the recent rescue package is an acknowledgement that even though we now have the vaccine and we're up very close to 3 million people a day getting vaccinated, we still have a ways to go, and we don't want to leave people and businesses and communities behind. So that's the reason why we have this $1.9 trillion package. And what is going to happen in Brattleboro is that you're going to get a share of the money that is coming into Vermont for the state and also for the community. And the town share will be $3.3 million. And you're supposed to get that within 60 days of when the president signed the bill, which was about 2 weeks ago. And then a year from that date, you get half of it in 60 days. And then the balance you get a year from the receipt of your first half. So within the next year, you should be receiving a total of $3.3 million. In your school district, and I know that's not the jurisdiction of the board, but obviously it's the burden of the taxpayers and the hope of parents and children for their future. The school district will receive $9.4 million. You're going to get a lot of flexibility. You have until the end of 2024 to spend that. So it's not a hurry up and spend. It's take your time and figure out how best to do this to help your citizens. And there's a good deal of flexibility with this. And again, that was something that Bernie and Patrick and I felt very, very strongly about. You know, our job is to get the aid back to you and to the state. But those decisions about how you can use that in the way that's going to most help your citizens for the future, that decision is best made by the folks in Brattleboro who elected you. You bear that burden. And, the good news here is you're going to have resources to work with. The bad news is, even though it's a big number, it's not going to be as big as people want. And you are going to have the very, very demanding and very important decisions about how best to utilize this. And I do believe this, that the decisions you make are going to have a lasting impact well beyond the next couple of years. Now, our office, and we'll be working with Bernie and Patrick's office, as this money comes to you and you have questions about, can you do this or do that? There'll be guidelines that are coming out. And if it's true to course, there'll be some confusion. But we will be here to try to assist in helping you answer any questions so that you can make the practical and efficient use of the funds that are going to be made available to you. Rebecca Ellis, my state director, is on our call now, but she'll be constantly available, as well as members of my staff. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be coordinating very closely with Bernie and Patrick. So this is really a great opportunity to use funds for the betterment of Brattleboro for the long term. So I wanted to have an opportunity to tell you what the program was for Brattleboro, and also to make it very clear that we're available whenever you need us when it comes to questions about the use of that money. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And we appreciate very much you coming. And also, the lines of communication are open. So I think that's great. While you're here, Congressman, there are a number of people who are applying for earmarks for community stimulus funding. And
Sure.
I would like them to introduce themselves to you and tell them a little bit about the project. And the first
Great.
would be Kay Curtis from Tri-Park Housing and the Infill Housing Project. Kay, are you here with us?
Yes, I'm on mute though. Am I on mute?
No, we hear you. We just
Good.
don't see you.
Okay. Let's try this. Here I am.
Okay.
Yay. Hello, everyone. I am Kay Curtis, the current board president for Tri-Park Housing Cooperative. Our mobile home parks provide essential affordable housing for 800 residents, or 8% of Brattleboro's most needy households. I have lived in this park for 6 years. My neighbors include, among others, aging retirees living on a fixed Social Security income, individuals with disabilities living on SSI, working class families with small children who find Tri-Park their only affordable option in Brattleboro. We need help before another Irene. And I will pass this on to Adam, our owner's rep, and he'll continue to tell you what our actual ask is.
Okay,
Adam?
thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Adam Hubbard. Are you here?
Hi,
Hi.
good evening,
Yeah.
everyone. Hi, thanks for taking time to check in with our community, Mr. Welch. I really appreciate it. As Kay said, my name's Adam Hubbard. I've been working as the owner's representative for Tri-Park for the past 3 years. I was born and raised in this area, and I've worked in land development and community development for 20 years now, and I've never seen a project as important or worthy of our tax dollars as this one. This project sits right at the intersection of human safety, affordable housing, addressing climate change, and flood resilience. As you probably know, it's a resident-owned park, owned and operated by the residents and shareholders, and it suffers from problems it didn't create. Many of the homes were built in the floodway and floodplain by a previous owner before flood maps existed. The park suffered, heavy loss, 20 homes in Irene, much more damage, expended the bulk of their capital reserves in cleanup and recovery. Now the infrastructure is 60 years old and needs to be replaced. We've done a nice job getting a master plan in place, but these residents really need help. I don't know how to say it any clearer than that.
Thank you. I think it's on Route 9, right? Where is it located?
Nope. He's muted.
Oh, he's muted already. Yes, it's just past the Chelsea Royal Diner, if you know where that is.
I do, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so
Good
now,
pie.
yes. Now let's go on to the next, because I know your time is short, Congressman. Josh
No, thank
Davis
you.
from Groundworks Collaborative is talking about the HealthWorks ACT.
Uh-huh.
Josh, are you here? There you
I
go.
am here. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hey, Josh.
Josh.
It's good to see you. Thanks for being here tonight. Here's my 1-minute pitch. Thanks for being here and listening to us. Of course, I'm Josh, Executive Director of Groundworks Collaborative. I'm here representing the HealthWorks ACT project. This is the collaboration of Brattleboro Memorial Hospital, Groundworks, the Retreat, and HCRS.
Wow.
It's pretty impressive.
That is.
The representative that was chosen to be here tonight. So this project stems from the recognition that was, it's been long held, but also reinforced in the pandemic, that our current healthcare model is not effectively serving our community members who are facing homelessness. And so what we propose is a HealthWorks Act, which is assertive community treatment to address two of Vermont's most pressing issues. Of course, that's homelessness and access to mental health care together. And so this innovative program with healthcare clinicians embedded at Groundworks shelter facilities combines integrated trauma-informed medical, mental health, and addiction care with peer support. Holds promise to reach our community's most vulnerable residents, reduce involuntary crisis interventions, relieve pressure on our emergency response system, and most importantly, to save lives. So we think it's a wise investment that's going to reduce healthcare costs. And just an equivalent here, a full month of care for a program participant is roughly the equivalent cost of 1 day in the ER or in an psychiatric hospital.
Wow.
So I hope you'll consider this. I know you're going to have a list of things that it's going to be tough to choose from, but thanks for listening to us.
No, thank you. I mean, that's really, really impressive.
And our last but not least impressive project is from the Brattleboro Retreat, and I'd like to introduce Constantine Van Krusenstern to discuss the Retreat workforce development. Constantine, are you here? Enter and sign in, please. Well, there is one more person that I wanted to introduce you to, Congressman, and that is Lissa Weinman, whom I think you know, who's
Mhm.
working with you on the Vermont Yankee Nuclear Waste Program. And so if Lissa is here, let's hear from her for a minute and then go back to Constantine if he joins us.
Great.
Lissa?
I just want to suggest that if Constantine or Lisa is here to raise their hand, if you can find that button, it helps Patrick find you in the stack.
Thank you, Tim.
Well,
Nope.
I just thought I'd say that because there's somebody here. Oh, no, there's somebody here named iPhone. So our modern world, Congressman.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, Congressman, you know, they're all, I think you know, did you have a meeting today about the Yankee nuclear waste program with Lisa?
I did not have a meeting today,
Yeah.
but I'm familiar with it. I mean,
Yeah.
and Rebecca, who's on the phone, is familiar with it. So yeah, I look forward to hearing from Lissa if we
Right.
can get her.
Yeah, I mean, she's not part of the ask of the community funding, but she just brought that issue to our attention at town meeting, and I thought since you were here, we could bring it up again. But you're
Right.
informed about that, so that's great. And then one more chance at Constantine. Tim, do you see him on? Does anyone see him on the
Afraid I
list?
don't.
No.
All right.
Somebody named iPhone, but I don't see Constantine, KVK.
Well, Congressman, we're thrilled to have you. You know, you're coming bearing tremendous gifts for our community and the task of using it wisely, which is a great responsibility that we're all going to happily take for our community. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Let me just finish. First of all, Lissa did meet with Thea and Alex from my office. So I'm sorry that I wasn't able to hear from her directly, but my office, my staff has been in direct contact with her. So we're going to be examining the issue that she's raising. And thank her if I don't get to do that before you do. But I also, you know, I want to make a comment here. I'm really thrilled to be on this meeting. We're not going to get through this unless there's real local leadership, and it's from select boards, but it's also from citizens. And you know, these two projects that Kate and Josh have expressed, that's all about a community committed to the community. It's about putting a stake in Brattleboro and saying, this is where we live, this is where we stand, we're going to make it better. And to make it better, we have to do one project at a time. We have to help people in the mobile home park. We have to help folks who have significant mental health issues. And we have to find ways where it works and it suits the needs of the people who would live right there. And what I find inspiring about it is that, you know, at the end of the day, what is done locally is really where it's at, because we all live in a place and we all revere having a sense of place. But that sense of place has to be nurtured and everyone has to be included. And these projects are just another indication that you've got that civic spirit to provide and help others in your community so that your entire community can thrive. So I'm thrilled to be in a position to try to help, and we will. You will have money from in the town where those are things that you can consider as well. And then the state is going to have money where there's going to be an opportunity to pursue financial assistance from the state. So all of us have a responsibility to do the best we can with what we have to build that community. But I really want to say thank you to you for allowing me to be with you tonight, and to the folks who spoke up and on behalf of these wonderful projects.
Well, thank you so much, Congressman. And if you could just hold on for one more minute, let's ask iPad if they could unmute.
That's the congressman.
They are.
iPhone.
That's you?
iPhone is who you want to check
Oh,
with.
iPhone. iPhone, please, please tell us who you are. Someday soon, Congressman, we hope to go back to live meetings.
Yeah, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah. There's a lot
Well, I
of
want
pent up
Thank you
demand.
very much.
Thank
It's
you very
wonderful
much.
to be with you. I really appreciate it, and I wish you the best of luck. And we're here. Our job is to help you be successful, so we'll do it.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Congressman.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Well, I don't know how we're going to top that for the rest of the meeting, but we'll try. Let's approve the minutes from March 16th and March 22nd. Would anyone like to start that ball rolling?
Ian, is it tradition for the clerk to make that motion? Do you feel like you want to pass that torch?
This is the baton. The baton. I am handing the baton.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
I move to approve the minutes from March 16th and March 22nd.
Okay, Daniel Quip, our select board clerk, has moved to accept the minutes of March 16th and March 22nd. Let's have a vote on that. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Okay, there are no opposed, so that motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. The next item is chair's remarks, and I have a tricky thing because I have just a couple things I want to say, but then I reserve the right to come back to say a few words after the town manager's comments, if I may. So let me just quickly say that I've noticed that there's been some street sweeping, and many of you might not realize what an environmental cleanup measure street sweeping is. And I want to thank the Public Works Department for that good work. And it's essentially a clean water measure. And the other thing I wanted to say was I hope everyone please stays vigilant about COVID measures, and also please sign up for your shot if you have that opportunity. And now let me ask Peter Elwell for his manager's comments.
Thank you, Liz. I have a brief announcement and then a longer one that I'll ask you to bear with me while I read. The brief announcement is eagerly anticipated always at this time of year. We start to see some warmer weather and get outside more, and people start asking, when is the leaf pickup going to occur? So I'm happy to announce that the 2 leaf pickups townwide will be on Friday, April 16th and Friday, April 30th. So folks can get the large brown paper bags to fill up with your leaves at area stores. And if you can get ready by the 16th, you can take them out to the curb then. Otherwise, you get a second chance on April 30th. The other comment I have to offer this evening is in the theme that Ian and Daniel presented to us a minute ago about passing the baton. And this is news that I've had the opportunity to discuss personally with each of the 5 select board members separately over the last couple of days, and now share with the community. I'm going to read from what is the written confirmation of my intention to retire at the end of this year. This is my official written notice that I will retire from my position as Brattleboro's town manager on December 31st, 2021. I'm providing 9 months notice in the hope that it will help enable a smooth transition of leadership in town government, including ample time to identify my successor. Serving in and with this community since January 2015 has been the most satisfying time of my career. After growing up here in Brattleboro and then living away for almost 35 years, coming home has definitely been part of what has made these last 6+ years very special. But far beyond the personal pleasure of living again in this community and region, I am grateful to have had the opportunity to work with so many dedicated and talented people, both inside town government and in the community we serve. The people I appreciate and admire here are too numerous to list. We in Brattleboro are fortunate to have more than our fair share of people who are committed to unselfish purposes and to achieving positive change through collaborative action. Nevertheless, I do want to specifically thank my teammates on the town staff for the amazing and often unsung work that they do every day to keep Brattleboro safe and clean and financially secure, always with an eye to the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead so that we can keep improving. While I'm grateful to every town employee, I especially thank Assistant Town Manager Patrick Moreland and recently retired Executive Secretary Jan Anderson, with whom I have worked every day in the town manager's office and for whom I feel a special appreciation both as colleagues and as people. And finally, I thank the Select Board. The Select Board who hired me, for giving me the chance to serve in this position, and them and all the Select Boards since, right up to today, for your support of professional local government management and for our collaboration, your collaboration with us, the town staff, and with the community whom we serve together. I will continue to contribute to the welfare of our community as a volunteer and supporter of various causes and projects. However, after 36 years of local government management, including the past 22 years as a town manager, I must admit that I look forward to making my future contributions in a supporting role. My family and I love Brattleboro. My wife and I are deeply invested here, and we plan to stay. Our children left for college from Florida, but came home from college to Brattleboro. They are living in the area with their partners, and we're grateful to have them near. So this is not goodbye. It's not even see you soon. It is, I hope, just another transition for me and my family, our town government, and our community in the normal evolution of relationships that is so essential and inevitable in life. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Again, this is quite a meeting. And I just wanted to say that the town of Brattleboro has been so honored and fortunate that Peter chose to spend these years with us. And we will continue to rely on him for the very last minute, all that we can. But I know that the many ways that Peter has improved the town are structural in nature, that he's left us a good government structure for us all to continue, and also in tone. And that I know one of Peter's goals, and he strived to maintain a civil society for us that is in fact civil. And so I thank him. And I think the best we can do to honor him and his dedication to the town is to let him step down with our thanks. So thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Are there other select board members who would like to comment? Daniel?
I'll go. So I do have some comments that are not about this, but I will first address the, Peter's resignation or retirement, I suppose one should call it. I've had the privilege of working alongside you in this partnership over the last couple of years, and I look forward to the work that we will do this year as well. I don't know many town managers, but I know a little, I guess, about what it takes to make change in the world and what it takes to provide leadership and also to provide an ear for the community. And I've been so impressed with everything that I've seen from you over the years that I've worked alongside you, and in the time before that when I would come and pester you with tape measures and whatnot. And so, yeah, I just really appreciate the service that you've given this town, and I hope to see you continue to be involved in the life of the town, as I'm sure you will be after a well-deserved break, I'm sure. And then my second thing that I want to say is maybe more prosaic, but in fact very important as well, and kind of follows on from what the congressman was saying. Yesterday, there was a soft launch of a new rental and other housing expenses emergency assistance program. It's called VRAP, VERAP, Vermont Emergency Rental Assistance Program, and it's run through the Vermont State Housing Authority. So if one were to go to vrap.vsha.org, you will find information on how to qualify for this program. The income limits are actually quite generous for households of 1 or 2. And so even if you're a member of that community who's behind on your rent and previously haven't been able to get assistance, you may find assistance in this program. And there will be assistance for other expenses at the home, such as utilities, which will be a little more expansive than recent utility assistance programs. So this program was soft launched yesterday. I went to an 1.5-hour training on it today. There are still some things being worked out. If you want hand-holding with it, Sevka is a good place to call, 802-254-2795. Or if you can't remember a number as long as that, you can call 211. And that is my comments.
Thank you. Other select board members? Tim?
I think Ian did have his hand up.
Oh.
But I'll,
Ian?
me? You.
Go ahead, Tim, please.
I didn't have any prepared remarks. It turns out I didn't need to because Liz's remarks were just right in line with what I wanted to say. I do want to give kudos to Peter being able to make a segue between leaf collection and his own retirement. Insanely amazing. But that's the kind of moves that we've been seeing from this gentleman for my entire time on the select board. Peter, your impact on this community has been great. And I believe, as Liz alluded to, it'll be a legacy going forward. I hope it will be, because some of the patterns, some of the practices, and certainly the tone of kindness that you've set forward is something that we should all strive for. So thank you.
Ian?
I have both a kind of a Daniel Quiff style double thing. I'll start. Peter, oh my gosh, congratulations. The town of Brattleboro owes you such a debt of gratitude. I have had the pleasure of getting to serve with you for one very intense year. And working side by side with you was an honor and a pleasure. I am disappointed that I will not have an opportunity to continue that relationship professionally, but I am also very happy for you, and I am so appreciative of everything you've done, both the things that I know about and all the stuff that I don't know about. I think that the space that you are going to leave and the connection, the interconnectivity that you've created is going to be an immense job for us to fill. And I am excited to work on that process and that responsibility with you and with the select board in this community. And I believe that we will move forward in a really positive direction. And I just want to thank you.
Thank you.
Another thing.
Hard to segue there.
I found a piece of information that came out from the state of Vermont today, very helpful. It's called the Vermont Forward Roadmap to Reopening. It's a 7-page, essentially a PowerPoint presentation. Love Vermont. That really very clearly lays out what the plan is for the next 3 months. In a time of COVID where things have felt so, there's been so much I haven't been unsure about so many things. Seeing a really clearly laid out plan, both for business reopenings and also vaccinations and group gatherings. I would really encourage people to Google Vermont Forward Roadmap to Reopening. I found it on VT Digger, but it's on multiple sites. Take a look at it, and maybe you'll find a little bit of comfort in it as well.
Great. Jessica.
Hi. So this is my first official select board meeting, and having Peter's announcement come today was really sad and surprising and exciting for him, I'm sure. But I've been looking forward to working with Peter for many years, and we've connected on some projects in years past. And I want to echo what everyone else has said about the value that you've brought and the thoughtfulness and kindness that you've brought to some past wild ideas and extravaganzas. And I definitely appreciate how you've brought that energy to move forward, no matter what the wild idea was. And that's something that I really hope that we can all continue, and I'm excited to be a part of that on the select board. And yeah, I'm looking forward to launching into my first meeting. So take it back, Liz.
Ian has something else. Please go ahead.
I'm sorry. I had one more thing. I just wanted to officially welcome Jess.
Yeah, I wanted to do that too.
Oh, yeah.
I feel Jess as the last new person on the board. My God, have you entered another really intense meeting? I joined right at the beginning of COVID, so I can relate a little, but I just wanted to welcome you.
Thanks.
As we all do, Jess. Welcome.
Welcome.
We do.
All right.
One day we'll get to sit in that room where Tim sort of is.
That's
virtually.
right. That's
Yeah,
why it's here.
Wait till we all change our screens, man. First we'll virtually be there, and then
No pressure.
ultimately we'll be there. Yeah. Okay, public participation. So this is the time in the meeting where anyone who has a comment that is not on tonight's agenda has an opportunity to speak. And if you are new to Zoom, you can either look under the participant page or look under reactions to raise your hand. And we already have 2 people who've raised their hands. So let's hear first from Mr. Stroud.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Gary.
How's everybody? I just wanted to say this to Peter. Peter, just going to say a quick quote from Mr. Dickens. Truly, it was the best of times. And I have to truly say it was the best of times you being on board. I learned a lot, absorbed a lot, took a lot, and I'm going to run with it, with a lot that you've taught a lot of us in the community and on the boards, and looking forward to seeing you again. I know sooner or later I'll bump into you again shopping out there. And I know you're moving upward and onward and forward to other endeavors. And I wish you the best of luck with that and with your family and any other endeavor that they pursue, and all blessings and everything. And I'll put it to the new board also, and to Jessica as well too, for jumping aboard, for guidance, and for the new team here that's going to be bringing us now into the new opening of Brattleboro, hopefully soon. And I'm really happy about this, you know. And I was going to say, the next person that comes in has big shoes to fill, Mr. Elwell. They truly do, coming in your place. And I don't know, it's just really just this, wow, it's like a family member, you know. But I know I'll see you out there at some point once we open up truly. Thank you again, Peter. It's truly been an honor serving with you.
Thank you, Gary. Okay, Jeannie? Hello, Jeannie.
Hi, I'm trying to start my video.
I can
Hi.
see you and hear you.
Can you hear me? Wonderful. Thank
Yes.
you for letting me speak. I'd like to speak on the safety review that's been done. I've been studying some of the documentation, and reading the implementation memorandum by town manager Elwell. And I'm wondering what is being done to move forward with the recommendations. I feel like things are moving slowly, as things sometimes do. However, some attempts have been made to start dialogue with law enforcement, and there hasn't been any response. I know that this is a collaborative effort. However, if we don't get responses from law enforcement, we really can't move forward with this project. And it was a huge undertaking. And
Thank you, Jeannie.
I would love to hear some
Yeah,
feedback on that.
fine. Peter, would you like to address that?
Sure. So on the inquiries that you've made that you haven't received responses to, I'd like to talk to you tomorrow, perhaps, about that, to understand how that what happened there, so that we can correct that. What I would say more generally about the way forward on the implementation of the recommendations is one of the things when we first received the report, and the select board was considering it and staff was looking at it, and we were holding a couple of meetings back in January about how to move forward. Some of us, myself included, had a expectation, because of how we're used to doing sort of more routine business in town government, that the way to go about this would be to look at this set of recommendations and do some prioritizing and focus on what we thought could be addressed first and what we thought might be most important, and those kinds of decisions that often get made when we're trying to sort through a complicated matter here. And what we actually heard from the people who had brought forward the report, from the committee and from the facilitators and from other people in the community who had asked that this work be undertaken, was that it would be a mistake to rush, and that it's important to view the individual pieces of work within the broader body of work. And that was actually a sort of a paradigm shift for me, I'll say. I think it was for us, based on some of the initial conversations that the select board was having about it. I know it was for me, and it caused us to create the plan for how to move forward in a way that sort of enforced upon ourselves some expectation of patience that was hard to have. And we may not have articulated that clearly enough, and that may be why it's feeling as though there isn't something happening around this. What I can tell you is that on certain of the individual recommendations, there actually has been substantive forward progress. And on many of the others, there's been some initial communication that I believe is establishing relationships with folks who are going to be working together over a long period of time to build up some ways in which things that we rely on the police for, have traditionally relied on the police for, will be able to instead rely on non-law enforcement solutions. But that's going to take a long time to build, and it's going to require the community to do it together with. It's not something town government is just going to do. And so we've just started that, and we hope to have some some progress to report in the months ahead that will feel more real to folks like you and what you've articulated about, sort of where's the progress, what's happening here. It's not going to happen immediately, and some of it is only just going to get started and then take a long time to build. But there is some beginning forward motion on it, and I believe by when we've said in what I brought forward to the board and what the board embraced back in March, we've said that we think we ought to have occasional accountability sessions where we give an update about how it's going, and we hear from the community about the reaction to how it's going, and identify ways in which maybe it needs to be adjusted. Our way forward might need to be adjusted over and over again, and things reprioritized as we go through a long process of implementation. And so I'm looking forward to when, a few months down the road, we have an accountability session where we can actually point to some successes and then grapple together with how to move forward with the things that are harder, because most of it will be harder. But I do believe that, in the next several weeks, we'll have some successes we can point to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Evan Chadwick. Hi, Evan.
How's it
Uh,
going, everyone? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right. So great, guys. It's great to see everyone in a new year with a lot of new ideas and some older ideas. And I'm excited to see what the next year carries for the town of Brattleboro and in the select board. And I look forward to following it as a citizen. I think I made myself clear throughout, but I just wanted to make it clear again here. And I was hoping that maybe I could get some kind of response to the position of relooking at a downtown community marketplace in Brattleboro, and whether or not that there will be some discussions there regarding whether or not that may be a possibility. And what type of feasibility studies or other work we need to do to really kind of entertain that type of idea. I obviously I ran my campaign based on that idea as well as many others. And I do feel, and based on talking with a lot of people, that there still is a lot of interest in the idea, and there's a lot of excitement, frankly, from downtown business owners about the idea. So just as kind of to set the tone moving forward, I would very much be interested in continuing to follow and assist if you guys feel necessary, and really looking at that idea further. But again,
Go ahead, finish.
sorry, no, and I'll just be quick. But I understand that there's a lot of very important things that you guys have to do. But with that in mind, I would just really like to bring that idea up again to you guys as you move forward in the next year. So thank you.
Thank you, Evan. And what I would suggest is give a call to Sue Fillion, the town planner, and start there, because I know that there was a Jessica's nodding her head, because I know that the Planning Commission had an interesting study regarding kind of linking the public spaces, and that included, the Harmony lot. And there were some interesting ideas there that I really liked that you might be able to go forward with the Planning Commission to start this ball rolling as you brought this idea up. So I think that would be the best place to start.
Can I say something really quick? And I would just invite Evan, if he wants to, just give me a call too, because I sort of came into the board with some of these ideas too, and then quickly found out how complicated the Harmony lot is as far as ownership. It's a little complicated. There's also issues of different priorities. Of course, a lot of people want parking, and parking doesn't go along with community space very well always. So it's not quite simple, but it doesn't mean we can't work on making progress. So,
yeah. Well, Jessica, you want to go ahead?
I just wanted to reiterate what you were saying, that the Planning Commission is really the work that we did pre-pandemic. Created a plan, looked at parking studies, looked at spaces, and identified a space that could turn into green space and an outdoor market. So I know their energy isn't right there right now, but if you approach them or approach Sue and let them know that your energy is there, I think they'd love to pick that ball up.
Yeah, Jessica's right. There was not only was there this linkage to all of the open spaces, which I think is fascinating, but also a parking study. So putting those two reports together with your ideas might bear fruit. And I thank you for bringing that up and joining our meeting. Is there anyone else who has a public comment? Seeing none, let's begin. We have a consent agenda, and Peter could probably give us a better interpretation of what a consent agenda is, but maybe we could also ask him to just address these 4 items, and then we'll take it from there.
So the purpose of a consent agenda is to isolate items that we anticipate won't need discussion. We don't always anticipate correctly. So there's a safeguard there that when the consent agenda in fact, is populated with just those items that are an easy yes for the board based on either prior consideration, and we're bringing something back to you in the way that you had asked for it so that you can just give it a final approval, or whether it's, some more sort of ministerial routine piece of business. We have some of both of those on tonight's agenda. It's the opportunity for you, without having to have a discussion about an item, to move that business along so that you reserve the greater part of the evening for the things that really do need your discussion. Like tonight, quite a few organizational pieces of business around the rules by which you'll hold your meetings this year, and the goals for the select board to, in terms of the highest priority projects for this year and so on. So tonight, what's on here are two items of quite a lot of significance, but where we believe the action is really sort of simple and straightforward. That's the replacement of the fire department's radio system, which is a 4-year lease purchase at a cost of just under $55,000 a year. And that's been planned for the last couple of years, and it was in the town's budget and has now been approved and authorized by town meeting. So we're coming forward to ask that you allow us to move forward and to make the commitment to buy the system and to expend the first $54,000, 800 and some odd that's in the backup materials for this, but the just shy of $55,000 cost that would be the first year of the 4 years. The housing action plan is a cost of just under $25,000 to hire a consultant to move ahead with a very important piece of work that will lay the groundwork. It will do the data collection and analysis that will then be used to make some really important decisions later in the year at the planning commission level and at the select board level regarding housing. We all recognize housing as a very challenging problem in town, very an area where we must take some additional action, and it's hard to know what additional action to take in terms of the affordability of housing and the predominance of rental housing in Brattleboro, and just making sure that those systems are working for people. We know that there are parts of those systems that are not. This study will set up the decision-making that will go forward later in 2021. And what's happening tonight with this item is you're hiring the consultant based on a selection process that's been completed, hiring the consultant to go out and do the piece of work that will lay the groundwork. And the other two items are really pretty ministerial. The first is an annual item where we have to certify to the State Department of Transportation, Agency of Transportation, that we have enough money to fulfill the promises we're making in the area of basically roadway maintenance, transportation maintenance, and a certificate of compliance that our roadway standards in Brattleboro align with the state's roadway standards. These are things that every municipality in the state have to certify to the state every year in order to remain eligible to receive state funding for transportation maintenance work. And finally, the appointment of new fire chief, Lenny Howard, to be the town's forest fire warden. This is actually an action taken by the state of Vermont, but where they need the select board to certify to them that we want our fire chief to serve in that position. And so since we've just completed a passing of the baton from Chief Bacassi to Chief Howard, one of the follow-up steps necessary is to have Chief Howard designated as the town's forest fire warden.
Thank you, Peter. Ian, yes.
I hope we can use passing of the baton at least 2 or 3 more times tonight. Having reviewed all the material, I want to just thank town staff and everyone for putting so much work into this backup work. I think it's sufficient, and I'd like to move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Well, isn't that wonderful? Yes, and I should have mentioned, there was considerable backup, and, we've all done our homework, and that information is also in the public realm for anyone who wishes to see it. And having had that motion made, may I have a show of hands and vote yay or nay on anyone who wants to approve the consent agenda as presented? All in favor, say
Aye.
aye. And no, and so that carries 5-0. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're on to new business. And the first item is town meeting follow-up matters. And town staff has put together a discussion for us on all those matters. Mr. Elwell?
Thank you. Yes, there's a memorandum in the backup materials for tonight's select meeting from me to the board dated April 2nd. It identifies 5 separate topics for follow-up action. I want to be clear that there is a good bit more activity going on to implement the decisions of representative town meeting. But this memorandum speaks specifically to those items where there is town follow-up action required that was not known ahead of time as part of the warning process for the meeting. So for many of the articles, there's also follow-up action being taken that was expected and planned. And so you don't really need to give further consideration to that. There also were items that were approved through the course of the meeting, particularly at the end of the meeting under other matters, where there was non-binding guidance provided of one type or another that didn't necessarily specifically need follow-up action, but more was just a statement of the perspective of representative town meeting on certain matters. These 5 are areas where the action of representative town meeting felt more like specific guidance either to town government in general or to the select board in particular on the 5 topics that are addressed here. And they are the select board dependent care reimbursement. So when the compensation for the select board was increased from the proposed $17,000 to the approved $42,000, the $25,000 was specifically to provide a greater degree of compensation for board members, which based on the action of representative town meeting, you might choose to accept or you might choose to decline in part or in whole. But $10,000 for the chair and $8,000 for each of the members as the cash compensation for the service that you provide throughout the year. There also was a related action or related provision within the action taken by representative town meeting that called for reimbursement for any of you who incur dependent care expenses in order to facilitate your participation on the select board. So that could be for elder care or for child care or for other dependent care for that matter. What we're proposing here in this first item is that soon, likely in May, staff bring to you a proposed procedure by which we would administer that reimbursement program. I think it's going to be important that there be some structure to it and that you approve the structure so that it can be administered fairly, for all 5 of you and presumably into the future for future select boards. So that's what we propose in terms of how to move forward with that, is that we as staff would take the first stab at it, bring you a proposed procedure, and then work with you to finalize that and move forward. Similarly, on the moving forward with the town's website, the funding for upgrading the town's website was approved by representative town meeting. There is this ongoing conversation that we're going to have more of, I know, later this evening, and then it'll be a continuing theme through the year that as we have dealt, as we, the staff and select board, have dealt with this matter of upgrading the town's website, the important additional objective of more broadly increasing and improving the engagement of town government with the community and bringing the community into greater engagement with us has become part of this. So there's sort of a website piece and a broader community engagement piece that are both at play here. And that led to an action taken at representative town meeting to ask us to employ the principles of greater community engagement and inclusion in the very launching of this project, that in the creation of the request for proposals by which we'll hire the professionals to work with us to develop a new town website, that we use an inclusive process to make sure there is community involvement in the development of that RFP. What we'd like to do is come back to you again, within a month or so, to propose the way forward that we see to launch that process, have that community engagement leading to an RFP, leading to the hiring of the folks who will help us with the website, and then get moving with that project. We'll have a sort of a calendar and some description of the steps involved to present to you in May. On the use of local labor and suppliers as much as possible on the water treatment facilities project that has been approved to move forward. There, it's really more of just an update. There isn't going to be follow-along action for the select board on this. There will be some follow-along action for staff and for the team of folks who will implement the project. We want the public to know, though, you and those who are supporting this, to understand that there are constraints on our ability to give local preference when we're using federal dollars. And so we've consulted with Bob Fisher. We understand the boundaries of that. We're making sure that we obey the requirements of the law. And we will, to the degree that we can, exercise some flexibility and some judgment there. We know that there will be some, particularly provision of local supplies to this project. And also, to the degree that we can, we'll make sure that there is the employment of local labor for it. We do want people to understand that federal law prohibits us from giving a local preference of the kind that would say somebody who's qualified and providing a lower bid from someplace else gets rejected so that we can hire local folks. To do that means to give up the federal money that makes the project possible. And so we're operating within the constraints of the law to do as much as we can with this, but there will be, it'll be more limited than if we had, all of our own judgment to exercise in this regard. And what we plan to do in order to make sure that the results of that are transparent is to track it throughout the project. We've already begun, and we will, through every step of this, to the point when a ribbon is cut a year and a half from now, be able to demonstrate the degree to which we were able to, even within the federal constraints, employ local labor and use local suppliers. Okay. There was an action taken by Representative Town Meeting that directed us to send the community safety review team's report and recommendations to certain state officials, the governor, the secretary or commissioner, I don't remember which they are, of DCF, and a couple of other folks, and to copy it to our local legislators who, as Representative Kornheiser said, had already seen it, but to just bootstrap that and make sure we followed through on the intent of Representative Town Meeting. I have sent the document to all of those folks, and so that follow-up item is finished. And finally, we received guidance from Representative Town Meeting that there shouldn't be any spending increases during FY22 that are in conflict with the recommendations in the Community Safety Review report. And so I've noted in this memorandum that that is guidance that we will keep in mind as we progress through FY22 together.
Well, thank you, Peter. So this seems to me like the town staff is telling us what they're doing and how they will report to us when they're ready for us to take action. But certainly, if there's a select board member who has any comments to make on this, please let me know. Seeing none, we'll move right along. There's no motion to make for this information, so thank you. Now, next is the fun part. Although we've been given our marching orders all meeting with these new developments, now we will review the annual select board goals, which, as some of us may recall, we never got to last year because of COVID. And then when we thought we'd be all wrapped up with COVID, that wasn't the case either. So it was a surprising year, but now we have the opportunity to, create a list of our goals. So let's call up that piece of our background administrative information. And Peter, would you like to begin addressing that?
Sure. I think it'd probably be best that I not speak to every individual item on this list. There's 15 or 20 different individual items, but I'd be happy to sort of summarize that at this time each year, the select board reviews a list of projects and actions that town staff brings forward, much in the manner that I just described about a couple of different items on the last topic, as a starting point for your discussion, right? We recognize when we bring something forward to you that's really more fully in the domain of select board, that what we're doing is trying to help by giving you a starting point sometimes we're pretty close and you tweak it a little bit and make it your own. And sometimes we're not as close, and it requires a lot of discussion. You give us some direction about how to revise it, and we make those changes and come back for a second or a third try. I've seen it happen both ways with this document in prior years. There's no one right way to do that. What I would say about it is an important document in that it represents your collective. You know, the five of you come to this with your commitment to serve the community, but some different perspectives about what are the most important ways in which we serve the community. And we all receive a lot of input from people in the community about what should be most important to us in the work that we do. So this is a place where, you know, with full acknowledgement that the basic ongoing services of town government are going to be, you know, a ever-present priority for town staff, and that there will be other important business that will come before the select board as the year goes along, that these are things that represent either something that is particularly important as an overarching principle in the case of 2 or 3 of them, or particularly important in terms of the substantive action that they represent in terms of most of them. That's how, you know, what a more appropriate way to describe most of these items is an actual action or path of action that we're laying out as something that you as a group are embracing as being of particularly high priority this year. I would say one more thing, and then I think I ought to pull back and receive that feedback from you to how this list looks to you and what you think might need to be done to it. The one very substantive thing I would offer is something I didn't feel I could offer for reasons I think are probably pretty obvious in the preparation of this backup last week, because I wanted to wait until tonight to make my own personal announcement after having the opportunity to speak with you and speak with the senior staff about it. So I don't have on here anywhere anything that reflects the search for a new town manager. Anytime that a select board is searching for a new town manager, that is, you know, a preeminent task, if not the preeminent task of that moment, because of the longer term impact that represents for the operation of town government. And so, you know, I will work with you in any way that I can to make that process, you know, smooth and effective for you. But I very firmly believe that you should identify that under governance as your top priority.
Number one.
Yeah, I think that's fairly clear to all of us, Peter. Thank you. So yeah, let's add at the government, but let's start with the first item of COVID recovery. And there's 4 points here. Does any select board member have a particular addition or topic that they'd like to discuss under COVID recovery? Jessica.
One I would like you guys to consider is support of activity or energy or vitality in public spaces, helping the downtown group energize downtown spaces, helping promote the arts community and the athletics community use of space around town, getting people out there.
Well, let's talk about where to put that. Do you think that's COVID related, or do you think that's public outreach related?
I think that that's COVID related, and I think that it's certainly a public health issue that we've all been cooped up and lonely for a year now, and having that activity and that energy and that vitality is part of the recovery.
We could put that under number 2 or number 4. You know, is it reopening town facilities slowly and carefully, or is it adjusting to the new normal? What do you think, Jessica?
Maybe it's a new number.
Maybe it's a new number.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 5 then. How do we all feel about that? This isn't, I don't think we're going to vote on each one, but we're, you know, considering. So Ian?
Jess, can you just say it again?
I don't have fancy wording for it, but the idea is that we are supportive of activity, energy, vitality, events that happen in public spaces, and we do what we can to make them possible.
Yeah. So as we reopen to encourage, yeah.
Yes, Peter.
I'd like to give an example that I think might be helpful, because we and staff have actually been reviewing an application, and we're in the final stages of reviewing it. Over the last 10 days or so, we've been back and forth a couple of times with the DBA around the relaunching of Gallery Walk. And so there's not just a relaunch and, sort of presenting it differently to the community, but also a pretty significant expansion of the different kinds of activities that are going on in different spaces. I don't want to say anything more than that about Gallery Walk, because I'll start getting past my expertise and saying something that probably won't end up being right. What I will tell you is, from a permitting point of view, we've been happy to be working together with the DBA on this to, for instance, enable the closure on each first Friday for the Gallery Walk events of that block of Elliott Street that in recent years we have been closing more and more often for these kinds of events between Main Street and the Harmony Lot. So that will be part of Gallery Walk this year, closing off actually half of the Harmony Lot, the western half of the Harmony Lot, so that people can still come in from Elliott Street and park in the eastern half, but the western half out towards away from Main Street will be actually having activity in it that is organized as part of Gallery Walk. And there are a couple of other spaces that we're still working on the details of that may work out, may not work out, but there's the possibility that 2 other public outdoor spaces in our downtown may be used on those nights as part of this overall, sort of relaunch and enlargement of the Gallery Walk event. That's what I hear when you say that, Jess. That's what I hear, and I think we could write. If the rest of you feel good about that as being number 5, we can write something that'll speak to that for you, I think.
Yes, Ian.
Yeah, I think I see it as, I fully support that, Jess. I sort of see it as a foil to, at the beginning of COVID, supporting the parklets. It's kind of the opposite. Now we're opening back up. Let's now support this reopening and revitalizing the downtown. It's been a hard 14 months. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I just wanted to add on, I don't think it needs any kind of rephrasing, but I wanted to highlight number 4. I feel very strongly about this one, particularly, I don't think it needs to be added in, but in the idea of having online participation in select board meetings moving forward, having a hybrid model, that we are moving forward and encouraging the type of participation that we saw during COVID. And that is absolutely a silver lining. It's pretty incredible how many people came out to be a part of the municipal process. I just wanted to give that a couple words and appreciate town staff for recognizing that and putting it on the list.
That's great, Ian. And I'll just say that to do an in-person town meeting and to do a Zoom town meeting is one or the other. To do a hybrid is harder. And so, I'm content to let the town wrestle with how to do that in the best way and come to us with recommendations, because it will be more difficult. Daniel?
I think, Ian, speaking to select board meetings specifically, I would imagine town meeting will be in person, old school.
I will.
Well, select board meetings, yes.
Yes, the point of information from Mr. Quip is appreciated and accurate. Yeah.
Oh, formal. I would say that this is absolutely a needed discussion, and I think it'll be a lively one too, because I have some ideas on how it might work and it might not work at all. But having steered the ship through COVID but I'm looking forward to the discussion, and I agree with Ian that it's super important.
Steered admirably, I might add.
As you are now.
Okay, anything else that anyone might want to add to our goals on COVID recovery? Okay, let's move to governance. We've already added a new number 1. Is there any other commentary on the governance section? Okay, no? Okay, moving right along. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think we should clarify that it's my understanding in reading this that these elements are for town government and town staff and the work that they do. And it is separate from the community safety reporting about diversity, equity, inclusion. So it's kind of two halves of the coin. This first one being a town matter. Would you agree, Peter, in that interpretation?
I think your focus on the town and town government is appropriate there. That's certainly what it's intended to address in this section. I would describe the difference between the first and the second a little differently, because the first is intended to be guidance for all of us. So to town staff and the work that we do, to the select board and the work that you do, to any of the advisory committees, frankly, and the work that they do, and your oversight and our work supporting those groups, that we all hold each other accountable for continuing to develop the skill of thinking about equity in everything that we're doing and every decision that we're making. So that is for all of us who are involved in town government. The second one is more specifically guidance to staff, and I would say similar to the couple of the items up under governance. This item about the continuing work of the staff committee that's been created to work on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, our IDEA committee. That this group of people continue to be empowered and respected, and that the work that they're doing together with the management team, continue, that we work together as a team to have that permeate town government. And there's some really important work that's already going on around that's being led by Sally Nix, our HR director, but where there's a tremendous amount of involvement of town employees and leadership of town employees through this committee. And so what we wanted to do was acknowledge here something that the select board won't be much directly involved in, but in your oversight role, we want you to acknowledge it as an important priority of town government for town staff in this year ahead.
Great. Select board members, does anyone have any commentary or new additions to that section? Jess.
Yeah. So a lot of the things on this list to me seem very measurable and very clear. We can say, yes, I've done it. No, I haven't done it. I'm gonna do it. Number one under diversity, equity, inclusion says view all decisions through an equity lens. Because I'm new, maybe I'm not aware. Did you guys get training, or is there a definition that the select board has for what an equity lens is? And if not, can we agree on one so that we're all on the same page with whether or not we are accomplishing that goal?
That's an interesting question. Let's ask Peter.
Well, so my direct answer on behalf of the other four members is there isn't something written down that defines what looking at issues and decisions and actions through an equity lens is. Each of them, I can't speak for Ian, who may or may not have had training like this elsewhere. The other three have had training as part of their role in the select board. It was, one full day, and just that one full day, it was definitely introduction to this topic, but in ways that you should speak to yourselves that I'm not going to try to speak to for you. I know that this issue and this need for particularly us as white people in positions of leadership in this moment in time, in our community and in our world, we all have grown to be much more aware of the need to not just bring our knowledge and experience to the work that we do, but to pay attention to what we're hearing from people who have lived experience that is very different than ours, that would be affected by our decisions, and to do the best we can. And frankly, this next part is part of continuing to try to find, to grow and do better in this area, particularly as a group of white people exercising power, that in those moments when we're not necessarily hearing those voices and we're making decisions that maybe seem like they're more routine to us, do we pause enough to, call out to each other ways in which what we're doing might not be serving everybody in the community? That's what, to me, viewing things through an equity lens is to be thinking about. And sometimes it's about racial equity. Sometimes it's about class impacts. Sometimes it's about different parts of town being differently impacted by the priorities that we set or actions that we take. And there's all different kinds of ways in which, the commitment to viewing things through an equity lens can come into play or fail to come into play. But that's what I think we're talking about. Is there a standard written down by which we measure that behavior? There isn't at this time.
So in other words, we're essentially deputizing ourselves to look to each other for assurances that that work is being done. And if we should need outside counsel of any kind to help us understand an equity question, we can call upon that expertise if we need it. What do you think about that? Daniel?
I mean, I think that in the time that I've been on the board, and like one of the reasons why I wanted to even get on the board was to view things through an equity lens. Do I have a perfect understanding, and could I articulate exactly what equity means to me? And could you all agree on it? I don't know. Do we need to? I don't know. I mean, there are definitely times when we have different views on how this, a decision that we make impacts the community. I would be reluctant to spend too much time kind of trying to find consensus on a written definition of what equity means to us in our work at this point, given that we just got landed with, $3.3 million and a town manager replacement search. And so I hope that we will hold one another accountable to view decisions through an equity lens. And Jess, if you have some information that you would like to impart to the rest of the board, you could certainly do that, through an email to all of us, or we could even put something on an agenda. But I would caution getting too prescriptive about it at this point.
Yeah, I think that Peter talked about all of the dimensions that it could apply, and that I think the best way is for us to hold each other accountable in that way. But Ian, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think I want to speak in defense of having it on there, even if it doesn't have definable goals or definable ways of achieving it. I'm going to use my own experience right here. Right now, I'm studying the rules of professional conduct for the Vermont bar, and there are some things in there that are really not very well defined, I guess, but they're really important just to have written down as something that we should be holding ourselves to as attorneys. And I don't know, I think putting it in our goals as something that we should be holding ourselves to as select board people is important. So yeah, I guess that's just my only thought on it.
I'll just say really quickly. Oh, sorry. I'm so used to kind of jumping in. I mean, I'd encourage Jess to send something out even if you have some specific language or something you want us to all look at and consider. Obviously, I think the problem is, as sort of Daniel was saying, is that you can get pretty trying to get 5 different interpretations of equity. When someone went right to racial equity, I went to oops, can you still hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I was thinking also about economic equity, and whether you have a house over your head and things like that is also just as important, in my opinion. So I think, and just looking at the whole list, I realized with a start going into this meeting that I have the most select board institutional memory. And I know that every single year I feel like we got to make this perfect because this is our list of things we're going to do. Doesn't really work that way. It is great to have this list because then we can check in months down the road and see how we're doing. And that's absolutely valuable. But also so much is going to happen that we don't even know about yet, as evidence to a couple things that happened tonight. So it's always a balance of trying to get a best effort and then knowing when to step back a little bit and understand that a lot of our work is responding to chaos once in a while. Daniel, oh, sorry, I'm calling on you.
It's all right. You've still, it's a slow pass with the baton.
Muscle memory.
It's so
I
hard.
would say that I would invite us all, when we're in a moment where we need to make a decision, to question whether or not we are making this decision through an equity lens, and to have that discussion in that moment, right? When we have the $3.3 million to spend on some transformative project in Brattleboro, equity will absolutely be a consideration, a big consideration in that project. You know, the two projects that Josh and Kay spoke to have a huge equity component to them. And I trust that we will come back to that question when we are making big decisions, but it is not the only way that decisions get made.
Before I let Ian speak, I just want to say, I think it's vagueness. It's important that it's vague. But anyway, Ian, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we didn't have this list of goals last year. And if we had this list of goals and we'd had that one on there, I definitely think that we would have been thinking about that and implementing it in a lot of ways. So I'm glad that we have. I think it's a good thing to have on. So.
Okay, are we ready to move on to community safety, or does anyone have a last comment on equity, etc.?
Thank you guys for clarifying.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for pushing us.
Yeah. Community safety. Okay, so we have the continuing implementation that Peter addressed earlier in the meeting. And yes, Peter.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your sentence. I did want to offer a comment.
Please do.
Okay. So sorry to leap right back into this one, but I think it's really important. And since it came up at the beginning of the meeting through public participation, I just feel like I ought to reiterate here in terms of the setting of the goals, that the importance of this dynamic tension between urgency and the need to go more slowly and be more inclusive and think things through, and that not everything can be solved at once. And that's the harder part, frankly, for me, and I think probably for us, in terms of the way we normally operate when we're addressing issues in the community. So I think it's important in this particular case that the list is not longer and more detailed. It's important to say two things. We're committed to continuing with forward progress, and we're committed to being held accountable in public multiple times during this year. And I think to be more specific than that risks placing urgency above the need to do this in a broader, harder way.
And chaos. Yes, Jessica.
I feel like I'm talking so much this meeting.
That's good.
Peter,
Yes.
So to me, the community safety review reflected a lot of mistrust in systems. And I wonder if we're only checking in publicly with the community twice or two more times in the year, is that enough to feel like we're doing this in a transparent way that builds trust?
Mm-hmm. So I think that's ultimately for you all to decide, for the five of you to decide. What I would say about it is the work that is going to be ongoing in preparation for those accountability sessions is with people in the community who have advocated for some pretty bold change. So it won't be invisible. It won't be very public, but it won't be invisible to folks who have actually been some of the strongest voices for doing things differently. Now, I'm not suggesting that that is public accountability. What I'm suggesting is that it won't all be done sort of behind a curtain, okay? And I personally feel very strongly, I've said so back in March, and I'll say so again now, that first time we do this ought to be in August. you know that if you decide it's going to be in June, we're going to come forward and present you with the information of wherever we are in June, and we're going to have that conversation. I'm worried about trying to do the first time any sooner than August, because there is so much of this that we're just beginning to try to even figure out sort of who to be talking with and how to begin the process of implementation on several different fronts. And I think over the next 3 or 4 months, we're going to get to a place where we can speak in ways that are going to show, you know, we really mean this, and we're really actually starting to at least see the way forward. And in some cases, you know, be making the way forward. But any sooner than that is, again, I think misplacing urgency at the front of the line in this really complicated situation. How often we do it after August, I don't have as strong an opinion about, except to say that if it's like monthly or something, there's just not going to be that much to say each time. So that's why I suggested August and December as what made sense to me for the first 2 times. But, you know, the select board needs to decide that.
Yes, Tim.
I think some of this also is that we're a little bit, let me just speak for myself. I'm a little bit brain scrambled with the sort of news we had tonight and sort of thinking about, okay, well, how is that going to affect our implementation? So I think you can look at this and think, oh my gosh, maybe we still have Peter, we got to squeeze it tighter in, you know, but I'm going to go ahead and say that I think it would be appropriate to go back and think about that a little bit more. Chat with Peter if you need to, and we'll come back. I think we didn't schedule that we were going to approve it this time, right? We were going to come back.
There's no motion. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's usually we take 2 meetings to kind of make sure, like if Jess wanted to add some language to that piece, you know, to make sure we're all happy with it. So that's all I was going to say.
Yeah. And, well, the other thing too that I think we all need to bear in mind is that these are our own goals that we're setting for ourselves, and they can evolve as we see fit as the year goes along. So with, for example, the news that we received tonight, you know, that may accelerate or decelerate these items, and we can come to some sort of agreement on any of these items because things change and things evolve. Yes, Ian.
Yeah, I think, you know, we have 2 weeks to think about these things. I would say I give a lot of weight to Peter's assessment as to when the first check-in should be. You know, he and the rest of town staff were really embedded in looking at these recommendations and creating the memorandum that we voted on. Yeah, I give a lot of weight to when he thinks we'll be able to have a really substantive discussion on a check-in. And so I'm kind of in a position to move forward with that recommendation, at least for the first check-in.
Yeah, the other thing that's important to note that in that chart that Peter and town staff produced, some things are already happening. Like they're already being worked on. So it's not like we're all, you know, held in amber until August. Some things are actually happening. And while people may be frustrated because they don't see it or hear it, you know, it is going on. More discussion?
I just want to offer again that it is exactly that, Liz, that people aren't hearing about it, and that allows mistrust to fester. And that also, even if there's very little to report, continuing to show that we're talking about it, I think is an important step in rebuilding the trust and ensuring the commitment that the work is happening.
Well, all that is,
and it doesn't, it doesn't necessarily have to look like a check-in.
Right.
It can be
so
an update or a small piece.
let's hold that thought and all think about it in the next 2 weeks and see what bears fruit in our next discussion on that. Ian?
Well, I was just going to ask, between now and August, there are multiple things on the in the chart memorandum that required select board policy decision. Like, would we anticipate even one or two of those coming up within that time? So there would be discussion on it. It would just not be the check-in, I guess.
I think that's to me.
Yeah.
Yes, please, Peter.
So I hesitate to try to speak specifically to it. I don't have the list in front of me. What I would say about it is I recall that several of those, I can't say that the answer to all of them that start with that phrase about, subject to select board direction, policy decisions. I can't say that all of them would come after a first review in August, but I can comfortably say most of them would, and maybe all of them would, because my recollection about them is that they are generally areas where policy decisions you will make are going to be informed by other stuff that's going on, either within that particular item or in other items on this list of 41. And so until we've started to take stock of what progress we're making, some of the lower hanging fruit where we're going to make faster progress are going to be those things that staff can just do because we can just do them and because we need to still be checking in. I would say this about it. And again, I want to be careful not to get too specific because you're setting goals tonight. We're not actually doing implementation decision-making tonight. But what I would say about it, to be a little more specific, is there are a few of these things that we're already well underway with. And one of the reasons that actually the thing that I personally view as the easiest, the most clearly implementable just to do it, hasn't yet been finished. So if we were having an accountability discussion tonight, I wouldn't be able to tell you it's done. But the reason why it's not yet done is because Mark Kerrigan and I are in communication with people in the community to whom that very issue is specifically important. They spoke up for it in the community safety review. They spoke up for it being part of the recommendations. And in the recommendations and in the process by which we came to launching the implementation, it became really clear to me that part of being a little more patient than I'm used to being is to make sure that when we go to implement the stuff that looks easy and clear to us, we don't just rush to do it because we think we know the answer, but we interact with the folks who know more about it than we do and or care deeply about it. And so together we're agreeing about how to move forward to implementation. I believe that one that I'm alluding to is going to be, between now and August, something that we're going to tell you is finished because it's within Mark's authority actually in that particular case to implement it. We're working through a process together with the community to get to where we feel comfortable that we've actually been inclusive enough that taking the action is appropriate. Right now, I believe taking the action would be premature.
I just wanted to comment that with regard to trust, when Peter brought this to us in March 2nd, and we unanimously voted in favor of it, there was a lot of trust there from the community as a whole and the select board unanimously to the work that the town staff had done. So a lot of controversy and initial mistrust and so forth, I think has been addressed by the thoroughness of this chart and our commitment to go forward. And I think that commitment still stands. And I think that the goal that we've set recognizes that commitment. Tim?
I just wanted to agree with that and also say that there's nothing wrong with when a constituent comes to you and says, what about all this stuff? When are you going to do this? Why can't you do it before August? We have to say, first of all, it's not obnoxious to say, did you read the document? Do you understand why we all voted in the way we did and our reasoning behind it? because I think that's reasonable to make sure that people are aware of the thinking that was just articulated so well behind the timeline. So, you know, I try to do that. If I get somebody who's impatient with, you know, the sidewalk plow, and back in the day when we were trying to get to, I explained the process, like, well, what do you know so far? Okay, well, then we have a common ground to talk about. Here's why we did this. Make sure they understand the reasoning behind it, because if you just jump into the process, it can look like, okay, maybe the board's just kicking it down the road. No, there's a reason why we're following a process. We want to get it right. I went on too long, probably.
Are we content for now to let this section go to the next meeting for any further discussion? Are we further content to have a little coffee break for our ASL interpreters?
Yeah, thanks for watching.
Do you mean that we will finish our discussion on select board goals and move on to the next item when we are back from our little break?
Yes.
Okay, could we take 3 more minutes to just talk about the rest of the things that are on the goals? Because I think it's important that folks in the community
1, 2, 3,
know.
4. Well, there's 4 more topics.
Yeah, I don't feel like we need to get into it. I just want people to know what they are.
Oh, I see. Oh, sure. Well, go ahead, Daniel. You just bring those up.
Great, I will. Thanks so much. So the next topic was housing. The 2 goals listed are complete the housing study, which in the consent agenda, we accepted, we hired somebody basically, thanks to the Planning Commission. Adopt and begin to implement the housing action plan that results from the housing study. And then the next section is about sustainability. Particularly interesting one here is number 1, formalize the fossil-free facilities fund. So if you're a fan of the letter F, you'll enjoy that one. And that is I'd say that's a TBD, and I'm interested in what is deed in that TBD. So yeah, and then we've got stuff about being able to catalog emissions and understand our carbon sequestration potential, strengthen the trail system, reactivating the agricultural land protection fund. And then in the next section, the utilities, stormwater utility, which we were thinking about the other year, but then this whole pandemic kind of got in the way. And then in the final one, we've got a section about public outreach, create a new town website that is informative, inclusive, and user-friendly, and increase the amount and quality of community engagement. I want to say that, like, when I read this backup, I'm like super psyched by all of these goals.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
I guess because we didn't do goal setting last year, I'd sort of forgotten that actually in the previous year when we did goal setting, we did kind of add and tweak a little bit.
Yes.
And I was just ready to be like, oh, these are great, brilliant. And I learned that we have some other stuff to do. So that is fine by me. But adds and tweaks are fine, I suppose.
Yes.
I also mentioned there is one big thing that's not on this list that I just want to also give the heads up on that I want to add. It's figuring out cannabis retail rollout.
Okay. So anyway, this is not the end of the discussion. Daniel has teed up interest so that everyone will come back in 10 minutes.
We're talking about this after
That
the
was a
break.
long tee up.
What, Ian?
I think there was a little misunderstanding. I thought you had said that we were going to stop this discussion on this item and move on to the next item after the break.
Oh, well, if I said that, I didn't mean it.
Okay.
Because-
That's what I understood.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So Daniel did a wonderful job of, keeping our interest for after the coffee break. I have some things I want to add, and as I'm sure you all do or may wish to discuss. So I think we should take a break and come back and start in with these last 4 items and see where that takes us. All right. It's 8:00 now. How about at 8:12? All right, let's reconvene. And again, I wanted to apologize for the misunderstanding. I didn't mean to rush through this list. I just meant that we could take a break after the community safety and then come back and discuss the other items, because I know that these goals are important to me and they're important to all of our members and the town. So let's, these are serious topics. So let's start with housing that Daniel teed up so nicely. And we did discuss earlier this evening about the housing study. Is there any further discussion about housing other than these two items? Is there anything that people want to add or comment on, Daniel?
Yes, I feel like these list of goals are not all the things that the town does, right? And just because it's not on this list doesn't mean that it will get forgotten about. But we did sort of make a commitment to kind of review how the impact of the security deposit ordinance has been. And so I just wanted to kind of put that in there.
Right. And I think that will be in the report, won't it?
I don't know. We'll see.
Well, anyway, certainly when the report comes out, then we'll have had more time to assess, the new ordinance and so forth. But I'll keep that marker in there. We want to put it in, we certainly can. Yes, Mr. Gano.
Yeah, I think, Daniel, I was trying to decide whether to bring it up or not, as these are kind of broader goals. But I think in this instance where we made a pretty clear commitment that we would go back and look at this in a year, I think I'd like to see it added on as well.
Great. Okay. Anything else? Yeah. All right. So we're all nodding. Is there anything else in the housing realm? Nope. Okay, moving on to sustainability. Somebody asked me, one of my fellow members, where did this idea for the Fossil-Free Facilities Fund come from? And I know that Daniel has had, made some moves toward it in the past, but I went through the article that I wrote for the about the sustainability coordinator in 2019. And there it was that we would provide funds for the town to go beyond best price when a sustainable purchase has a premium cost that is beyond the best price decision-making, but would provide greater energy efficiency. So that's kind of along the same line as where we have now, but I think it more directly addresses that motion that Daniel had about capital projects to make sure that their fuel systems were efficient. Would you agree, Daniel?
I like the way that it's worded, fossil free. We're not trying to get rid of fossils. We're trying to get rid of fossil fuel. There's nothing wrong with fossils.
I own several.
Yeah. And so, like the establishing of this fund will hopefully, and we don't really 100% know, but hopefully having this fund available might make the difference between, choosing this system, which is slightly more expensive, versus this system, which keeps us chained to fossil fuels.
Right. Yes, Ian.
And just to clarify here, this is a $70,000 that was part of the, yes, okay.
Yep. And
I forgot
to clarify,
such a fancy name.
You're not trying to claim credit for the alliteration, because I think that was my brainstorm, Liz.
Absolutely.
I think somebody added an extra F. I think I had 3
You know
Fs.
what, Tim? Wouldn't you? If you had the opportunity to add another F, wouldn't you?
I always try to get the F out, actually. That wasn't dirty. That wasn't
Joke of the night. Okay.
That wasn't dirty.
Boy, oh boy.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
So sustainability is a very large topic. Does anyone have anything to add or comment on?
Can I just ask? I'm not sure where the Peter. Do you want to just give us one line about? I'm not sure where the local trail system came from. That's something we were discussing about 2 years ago, but has that been bubbling back up from planning?
Yeah, so if I'm going to give you the one line, and then if you want to take a deeper dive, Stu's in the meeting and could explain it better than I can. But the gist of it is there are lots of good trails. We're blessed to have accessibility to trails from, right in the center of town. But it's also true that it's a disjointed system. There's different trails maintained by different folks with different degrees of accessibility and visibility to, and invitations to the public for use. And so there's an ongoing effort that Stephen's at the center of to increase the communication among the different parties that are responsible for trails to actually create a more coordinated awareness, right? So that there's coordinated activity around making sure that we have the best trail system we can have and better public awareness of where these trails are and how to get onto them. And so that there's, the broader body of work, I'm sure includes more than that, but the essence of it is to try to make a more integrated system out of something that's already an asset, but not maximized.
Yes, Ian.
Support this so much. I think it's great. I think COVID just showed people how much they enjoy being outside. Our trail system in Brattleboro is such an asset. It is a jewel in our crown, and I think that it speaks to outreach again. Getting this information out to people so that they know all of the different things that they can have access to being here, or if they moved here. So yeah. Again, I don't want to change the wording or anything. I just really support it.
Yeah.
Well, Tim, did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to point out that, to have a system that's cohesive, similar to the Retreat Farm Trail system, actually produces a little pamphlet thing that folds out. I think that was made with Retreat Farm and the Wyndham Regional Commission in collaboration, if I'm not wrong. But, to be able to highlight the different areas and ultimately connect them would be wonderful. Of course, we've talked about the rail area for quite a while, and hopefully we can move forward on that.
Yes, and I'm sure Jessica is aware, as Daniel and I are, of the study that the planning department did pre-COVID to link the public access parks in the downtown together. And that's what I was bringing up to Evan Chadwick as a good resource for the Harmony lot. But there's good ideas among this goal, and I think that we can all support it. Yes, Jessica.
One thing I was curious about is the public access, increasing public access, and if that is primarily around, like what Ian was saying, around community engagement and marketing and that sort of work. Is it about infrastructure, like parking and signage, so that people know where to access trails? Or is it about accessibility?
Well, that's interesting because I thought it included, the town park system, but I don't know. Should we ask Sue?
Please.
Let's interrogate Sue Fillion, our town planner. Sue?
Hello.
Hi, Sue.
Hi, Sue. Do you wish to be interrogated?
Sure. Sounds so formal.
Well.
So within the department, and we've had a lot of opportunity to be working on the trails. Stephen has been really working on that, and I've been doing some work with DBA. So to Jess's question on public access, part of it is making sure that when people show up at the trails, they know that there's some parking spaces and they know where the trail is, because we hear that as a common complaint. So one of the things that I'm working on with DBA, they have a small grant from Vermont Community Foundation, is actually kind of, having some sort of coordination. We respect that there's lots of different people managing trails, and some have put a lot of effort into it and have their own unique identity. But something that everybody knows, that this is a Brattleboro trail, a trail in Brattleboro that can be marketed that way, but also be signed that way, so people know that they've landed where they want to be. And then the other thing I would mention is the state is actually putting a lot of resources into outdoor recreation as an economic driver. And so that's also why this is kind of taken off as well over the last couple of years. We do have, some challenges with the connecting the rail trail, but actually Stephen was out there today with some people kind of investigating that, possible whetstone connection as well. So there's a lot to be done. And then also just to highlight what we have.
And Sue, also that study that the consultants did about linking the town parks and trails, that's part of that?
That's more about making your way through downtown, using the existing networks, so the streets or public spaces, and some private spaces, as to how people move. I do expect that is something that will come back before the select board. Just so nicely said earlier, it's with staff changes in the department and COVID and all these other things, it's slowed down, but it is something that we do intend to bring before you and to the public.
Great, because I think there's just a lot of opportunity there. I thought that plan was just, well, to use a planning word, nifty.
Is that a funny word?
Thank you, Sue. Does anyone have any more comments or questions for Sue? Yes, Jessica.
One of the things that I noticed, and to me is a big part of how I define sustainability, though I think we have a very flexible definition of that, is multimodal transportation, bike, ped, train. None of that is in here, and I was just curious about that.
That's a very good point, because I know the last time we did these old goals, some of us were, quite focused on buses, and now we also have this good outcome about the trains with the new train station. So do we want to add those things to sustainability? Do you want to have a new transportation section? What is the will of the board? Ian?
So we've got on top, I would add on that with bike accessibility, with Western Ave, Route 7, the bike lane discussion there, and then also Putney Road and potential bike stuff going on there with the new construction. So yeah, I think there's definitely a lot coming down the road there on that. So I would think it would probably make sense to include it in some way. Maybe it'd be kind of broad, again.
So coming down the road, Ian, is that the phrase that you'd like to use?
Yes, I was hoping someone picked up on it.
Okay, good. So should we have a sustainable transportation item as number 5? Is that something that, or do we want a whole new section on transportation that Sue and Peter can come back to us with? What do we think?
In my opinion, this is one of those examples of things that are already in progress and we're really excited about, like the bridge, which in Ian's assessment didn't even come up. And that's an amazing opportunity for multimodal stuff. I think because it's just, we're not going to hit everything because there are so many good initiatives already going forward, and we can take the time to list them if you want. It's our list. But I'm okay with, just kind of capping it and making sure that this body is in agreement with, what we want to hold our feet to the fire with.
Let's add a number 5 about multimodal transportation sustainability efforts, and we can see how detailed we want to be about that at our next meeting. Ian?
I would like to interrogate select board member Quip as to whether he would like to incorporate anything about roads in there. As I recall from the end of last year's budget discussions that you had some interest, and I was wondering if you had thought about adding anything to the list here on that subject.
No, is the quick answer. I fully intend when we are in budget season to make sure that the roads are taken care of in a manner that, you know, kind of keeps them in good shape. And, you know, you all know that. And we had that agreement in our last, not so long ago, budget cycle. And, you know, I really approached this agenda item today as like, here is a list of goals. It is not the exhaustive list of all things that will get done. And also we fully know that all of the things on this list, not all of them will get accomplished. So I am less inclined to add, and probably would, if anything, would be more inclined to trim, you know, especially given we got two other pieces of business that we didn't know were going to be on the list.
Yeah.
But that's where I'm coming from. So I am quite happy to like accept the goals as they stand. If other people have agreement around adding goals, I will not stand in the way, but it's not a burning thing for me.
Well, I propose that we add a number 5 that says something like multimodal sustainability transportation. And Peter can make sense of that word salad that I just said. Thank you. Utilities.
We should
Yes?
say thanks for Sue, unless you want her to.
Oh, yes, Sue.
Sorry.
Thank you, Sue.
All your work, Sue.
Thank you. Now we come to my very favorite project. And, you know, of course, I'm a town utility nerd, but this project has been held in abeyance, this creation of a stormwater utility. And it's so necessary because, you know, the state of Vermont has required us to provide certain stormwater utility measures, and they're expensive. And the state of Vermont also has roads that go through our town. And this is a program that will create free money to pay for the things that the state has mandated. So I just, you know, you guys might not think it's the greatest, but I'm really anxious for us to get that going. And Peter, would you like to elaborate any more about that?
Yeah, very briefly, but I think it's important, since we've gone that deep, to say that the free money that you're talking about is because the state, of course, doesn't pay taxes. So right now we do stormwater management. We fund stormwater management activities with taxes, with general revenues. And so the state doesn't contribute financially to that. Because of I-91 in particular, but also the other network of state roads that run through Brattleboro, the state will actually be a significant fee payer, if not the single highest fee payer into the funding of a stormwater utility. So the sooner we can get it up and running, the better, so that we collect those fees from the state and have a more systematic way of addressing all the stormwater needs to comply with the higher standard of regulations. Daniel's got something. Do you mind if I finish?
No, finish, and then I want to go.
Okay. So the one other quick thought I wanted to just lay out there for realistic expectations is this is a very, very complex piece of work. It's going to take a few years. It's somewhere between 2 and 3 years between starting and actually having it operational, because there's a tremendous amount of engineering analysis that goes into it, and then legal work and policy decisions and modeling for the, you know, how to make sure we have a fair rate system back to equity, right? This is going to be a fee-based system. So we need to make sure that people are actually paying according to the contribution of stormwater into our systems. And so there's a tremendous amount of analysis that goes on that, as you said, Liz, it's really nerdy. It's not very fun to discuss, but it's essential to making sure that the system gets set up properly. So that's why the language here is to begin the creation of this, and with the parenthetical that talks about what we think can be accomplished in the first year. It will go on for another year or two before we're actually operating a stormwater utility.
Thank you for clarifying that. Daniel?
I just want to kind of speak to the free money piece of it. I want to be honest with the people of Brattleboro. This is a utility that will have ratepayers, right? Just like all of our other utilities. So we, at some point, will become ratepayers based on the amount of like impermeable surface we have on our property.
Exactly right.
Yep.
And the way it usually works for residential, obviously the devil will be in the details as we go through our process, but the way it usually works for residential properties is there's a homogenized single fee that's paid for residential properties up to a certain size, but that takes in most of the residential properties in town. I know in one of the examples, I believe it's Colchester, but don't hold me to that. But as we've looked around the state at examples that show us the path to follow to set one of these up well, the homogenized rate for residential properties is $47 a year. So most homeowners are going to pay less as a ratepayer into the stormwater utility system than they pay in taxes for stormwater today, because of the load that's going to be carried by the state of Vermont, and because most large commercial properties, maybe not most, because it depends on like how much they're paying in taxes, how valuable those big properties are, but on the larger commercial properties, particularly the ones that have large parking lots, they're going to be significant ratepayers into a stormwater system, and how that's going to relate to what they're paying in taxes is more complicated than for homeowners.
But to me, the big bonus is that the state does not pay now, and they will pay upon completion, especially for 91, which is a biggie. Yes, Ian?
I have a quick process question and also a newbie question.
No, you don't get those.
I don't get any more of those.
No.
Let's go to Jess.
We'll make an exception.
As this is my first yearly goal setting agenda. For a item that is a multi-year thing, would we usually be looking at like last year's list of goals and like moving this along into the next one, or is that not really the process and we just sort of reassess it each year?
It's actually a good question. And the answer is normally you would have last year's goals in front of you. You don't have the goals in front of you tonight from 2 years ago because it didn't make sense to me to put them in given all that's happened in between.
Yeah.
If that's left you lacking, I apologize for that. I would say though that the purpose of putting last year's in isn't so much for the continuity of multi-year items, although it can have that impact. It's more to speak to what some of you have spoken to about this process, right? This isn't a scientific process, and it isn't a particularly rigorous, structured process, right? This is you as a group of 5 people determining what your, sort of top priority objectives that you want to announce to the community are for the coming year, knowing that, as you've said, you're going to do a lot of other things. Some of these we won't get to, continuity of town government goes on. So, but what this represents is, you as 5 people saying, we're the policymakers of this community, and we think these things are important enough to declare as, getting sort of special tracked attention from us this coming year. And that's not necessarily going to take an item that takes 3 years to accomplish to sit on this list 3 times in a row, because the composition of the board changes and the other circumstances around this list change.
And
Okay,
I seem to have a memory of the last time we had goals, and by December, we ticked off a great many of them.
I thought we had goals this last year. I swear, I thought we did.
We had a very simple
Staying
goal.
alive.
Yes,
We
stay
had
alive. Don't have
we had
everything
a-
crumble.
A survival goal, which here we all are. So good for us.
Check.
Okay, public outreach. Ian, would you like to address that topic? I know it's a fave.
I think I'm happy to be interrogated there, Liz. I think it is well worded. I think it captures both the direction that RTM gave us and also our discussion last year. And I think that I'm very much looking forward to all the work that's going to go into the website and outreach. And I think that, I'll add one other thing. I think that throughout this, that thread of outreach is very visible. In the backup material for the housing study, one of the things that they're going to do in their 5-month plan is a pretty large survey that they're going to put out to homeowners, renters, landlords. The question of how that survey goes out, I'm not trying to pick on that, but like, it's just throughout this whole thing, that question and that discussion. I'm excited to continue that dialogue and ways that we can improve that outreach.
Yes, Daniel.
And I would say that this is where like an equity lens comes in as well. I talked with Josh Davis from Groundworks the other day because he's my neighbor. And I said, Josh, when we do this housing study, if they come knocking on your door, your metaphorical door, asking for your opinion, please give them your opinion and make sure that they are in touch with case managers, people who are doing the day-to-day work of trying to get people housed. Mm-hmm. Because only hearing from executive directors will get one particular kind of perspective that is not, it's not awful. Josh has much to say and much expertise, but it's not the lived experience of people that are at the kind of sharp end of things.
Well, I would assume that there's a lot of stakeholders like the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust and a lot of providers that can provide insights to this report. And I'm sure that Sue has that under control.
I'm sure that she does too. I just want to kind of use that as an example of how, equity can drive something as simple as doing a survey.
Okay, so we have reached the end of our list, which is exciting. If there's no more comments right now, Jessica?
I did want to add the cannabis retail rollout.
Right. Okay, great. So
can I ask a question about
yes,
that
please.
one, please? I totally agree. We need to add it. Sorry for the oversight. My question is, would you prefer that it be its own thing or that it be a third item under community safety? It feels to me like maybe it fits into the family of things within the community safety realm. It didn't come from the community safety report, but I think that's what's driving the concerns around it, or no?
I think it should be its own thing.
No,
sorry.
Yeah, I think we all think it should be its own thing.
Very good.
Is that what I'm hearing?
And touches on multiple areas. You've been outvoted, Peter. Sorry.
No problem. I don't vote. I take it happily. No problem.
Yeah. Not only that, but I think, the Planning Commission has been studying the zoning and issues like that. And I think that can inform our work. Would you agree, Jessica?
Yeah, I think that the Planning Commission's been doing some good work around the infrastructure policy stuff that we'll need to address. I think that there is definitely also a role as creating a cannabis control board locally. And then also there's a really important role for us to take leadership in at the state level with participating in the statewide cannabis control board and how that shapes up and what additional rules or rollout gets added to the law that is written.
Got it. Thank you.
Super. Okay. So we'll see this at our next meeting.
Oh, okay. I've got one more.
Yes,
sorry.
Stragglers.
No, we were so close. Okay, this is actually just a question. Do we want to, and this is only because Congressman Welch spoke today, on COVID Recovery 3, would we have any interest in making that a little bit more specific to like the funds that he spoke about, or do we like how broad it is? I was just really I didn't know the figure number or anything like that, or the 2024 date, or maybe I did know that, but we kind of learned a couple of things today, and I was wondering if we want to incorporate that information into 3.
You know, I think we learned those things, but I think the person who wrote this already knew that. So why don't we keep it vague for now? And if we want to mull it over and add to it or subtract it on our next meeting, we can, and give us all time to think more about it.
We're not likely to forget the $3.3 million is lying
That's a
around.
very good point. Maybe I'm just excited about it. I think maybe that's just fun. I'm just excited about it.
I think we all are. Yes.
Surprised that Daniel didn't mention it during roads, but
it's good for non-recurring expenses, for transformative projects that we want to do that we have not been able to do, that will be benefiting all strata of Brattleboroians.
Indeed. I still have Route 9 on my brain, but of course that's the state's responsibility.
Peter?
Yes. I'd also suggest when you give this the additional thought you're going to give it between now and next time, that you keep in mind the 3.3 is especially exciting because it's a huge slug of money that has, explicitly lots of flexibility attached to it. And so there'll be that decision-making process that you'll go through. And that's really cool. We almost never get that kind of opportunity. And it's also true that there's going to be other money flowing. There's going to be some transportation specific money likely flowing. That hasn't been decided yet, but there's a big bill pending and something is likely to come forward out of that. And there are other ways in which we might seize opportunities to use COVID relief funds, either from the feds or the state, for other specific purposes. So I think having this on your list of goals being a little more general is helpful to understanding that, this could be really pretty fluid as we go forward. And that part's actually exciting. The uncertainty is exciting because it just means more money for more purposes.
Yeah, I think there's also, there could be money for the wastewater treatment, the water treatment plant. Mm-hmm. There could be additional money coming for an infrastructure bill. Yep. There's certainly a lot of money for nonprofits in our community that are not coming to the town, but would come directly from the state through a funding process to nonprofits. So that's separate, but everyone in Brattleboro needs to understand how this money, not just our 3.3 million, but the overriding money that's coming to the state of Vermont, affects residents, businesses, and also nonprofits. I mean, there's money beyond our $3.3 million, and we all need to be aware of it and understand it. As Daniel pointed out with this housing fund that he talked about earlier. Yes, BRAP.
Fair enough. Maybe I just wanted to say 3.3 million again a couple more times.
Well, we could make up a little song. Okay, so are we good with that?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. I know. We'll make up a rap song. Daniel?
No. That's not my skill.
Okay.
Liz, I gotta say, I like your style because you kind of assign things immediately to people. Daniel, this is your bailiwick. Yes, go. And we have no clue that you're gonna do this, of course, but it's good to keep us on our toes. So thank you.
Well, you know what? It's funny because it's like I'm looking right at each of you. I kind of like it.
I know, we're here. So
yeah. Okay, so the next item is Select Board rules for conduct of meetings and hearings. Now, we will be readopting these lovely rules. Does anyone have any comment or wish to amend them or anything like that? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion. Daniel.
I don't have a motion. I want to use this opportunity to remind members of the public how they can submit items for consideration for the Select Board agenda. And also remind myself, because there is sort of a timeline, and I believe that Elizabeth and Ian and Town Manager Elwell can speak to it if they choose to.
Yeah, it's in there somewhere, but let's ask Peter.
On page 4. It's under the section G, procedure for consideration of select board agenda items. And there's actually quite a lot there. I'm not sure that it is useful for me to go through it in detail, if that's okay, Daniel. But what I would say is there is here both information that's useful to the public to know how to initiate a request. And there's also very specific guidance that the board follows based on the chair and the vice chair having the initial authority over the agenda and making determinations about, you know, when or if something is going to be on the agenda and what happens if either they disagree or they both agree that something shouldn't be on an agenda. It's a very specific procedure about what we do as staff in support of this work to keep the select board and the public informed about what's happening.
Yes, Ian.
Yeah, I think just to pick out one important one for the public would just be basically, if you want to get an agenda item considered for a select board meeting, one of the ways is that you could submit a written request to the select board before 12 p.m. on the Tuesday prior to the next Warren select board meeting. And that's, you know, that is the deadline if you wanted to submit one, a suggestion. And then it would be considered by the chair and the vice chair and the town manager, and then move forward or not. So if Daniel, that's kind of what you're hoping to, like, I think that's probably one of the big ones. Yeah.
And that will be reported back to both the select board and to the person who suggested it.
Exactly.
Anyone ready for a motion yet?
Jessica.
Jessica.
Yeah, that's-
Sure. Yeah, I move to approve the rules for conduct of meetings and hearings for 2021, 2022.
Great. Jessica has moved that we, what's that language? That we approve the rules for conduct of meetings and hearings for the year 2021 and 2022. So all in favor of that motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that has passed 5-0, and there were no nays. So the next item are warrants and a rotation schedule for weekly review and signing of the warrants. And for those who are uninitiated, the warrants are the town's bill paying procedures. And so we have a schedule in our backup, and let's fill that out. Where's that? Peter, is there anything you'd like to tell us about that?
I think we should just have people volunteer for each slot. I'm happy to read out the dates if you'd like. Tim,
Yeah, that
Tim
would
is
be
also
good.
raising his hand.
Tim?
I always ask for a certain slot, and I don't remember why. But I'm going to continue that tradition and ask for November 1st to December 31st. Back before the COVIDs, it was when I was least likely to travel. And now it doesn't really seem to matter. But
Well, I'm sure you can have it if you want it. I don't know who raised their hand first, Ian or Daniel. Daniel, go ahead.
Daniel did.
I'll take the August to October spot, the
Maybe
sunny
Jeff wants-
part of the year when I might actually go in person to sign these things.
Jess probably doesn't know what. she's
Ian?
signing up for.
I would like wait, did you do August to October?
Yeah.
Oh, oh man.
This is sad.
I will take the June 14th to August.
Jessica?
It really doesn't matter. The only time frame that is really flexible for me is Tim's favorite time frame, and I won't take that away from him.
Oh,
So
actually,
any other
can
any
totally
other
have
time
it.
frame is the same for me.
Might I make a suggestion to you that if you do the first one, you'll mostly just be sending an email saying, yes, I saw these. Thank you.
Oh, sure. I'll do the first one.
Which is very flexible indeed.
Thanks, Daniel.
Right, and I'll back clean up, Peter, whatever's left.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, that was handy. Annual select board appointments, committees and boards. You know, when I looked at this, I had a very slim recollection of the committee that I'm on, but then I remembered, so good for me. But a little explanation for Jessica and the public might be in order, Peter.
Yep. So in the backup, there's a brief description of each committee, and it's so brief that I think actually in this instance, it's probably simplest just to read that off. So I will. And as I do that, I will let you know who in this past select board year has been serving in those capacities.
So helpful. Thank you.
Capital Grant Review Board. This board meets rarely to advise the select board on grants for capital projects and purchases. And this past year, it was Tim and Ian. The Rental Housing Improvement Program Loan Committee. This committee also meets rarely to advise the select board regarding loans made from the town's revolving loan fund to landlords who are adding or improving apartments in Brattleboro. I will say, while historically this one has met rarely, you know, with everything going on around, you know, COVID relief money that's about housing and the study that we're doing about housing, the need for upgrading and increasing the amount of housing, very possibly this might get more work. This committee might have more work in the coming year than it usually does. And
Peter, let me just interrupt to ask, are this money that we're talking about for these, well, the 3 items, is that program income
yes. So
in all cases?
yes. So yes, it's what we have normally referred to as program income. In these particular cases, it's the subset of that overall fund that is specific to the programs that lend money either to landlords or to businesses.
Thank you.
So that's why we refer to them here as the revolving loan fund, but it is that same pot of money. Yes.
Mhm.
And Ian was the select board member who served on that this past year. The Small Business Assistance Program Loan Committee. This committee meets occasionally. We used occasionally here rather than rarely because it usually meets 2 or 3 times a year. And advises the select board regarding loans made from the town's revolving loan fund or program income to businesses that are opening or expanding in Brattleboro. And Liz served in this capacity this past year.
We even had a meeting.
And the Traffic Safety Committee, which is the one of these that meets the most regularly. It is scheduled to meet every 3rd Thursday at 8 o'clock in the morning. We usually miss 3 or 4 months of the year when there isn't business that urgently needs to be addressed. So it meets about 8 or 9 times a year to consider matters of safety on the streets and sidewalks of Brattleboro. Consideration includes facilities and regulations related to the movement of motor vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians, and to the relationship between them in shared public spaces. And this past year, Daniel served on the Traffic Safety Committee.
Okay. Yes, Ian?
I'd like to stay on the rental housing improvement.
Great. Is there anything particular? Yes, Tim?
Oh, I thought we were throwing out.
Yeah, go ahead.
Since I was chair, I think I was only on the Capital Grant Review Board. I'm happy to serve where needed now, so I could stay on that and add one of the more lighter weight ones, or I'm flexible. But I was going to say that I'm supportive of Daniel staying on traffic safety because
me too.
I think when I was on it, I was there 2 years, and it really does kind of help to.
You win on that, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, I honestly think that the learning curve on traffic safety is, I mean, it's not like crazy steep, but like deciphering the speed data charts takes several goes round. And by the time you've done that, you're halfway through the year. And I'd be happy to serve on it again. If anybody else was like absolutely like mad for getting on the traffic safety committee, I'd be willing to hear their pitch. But other than that, I can show up on the third Thursday at 8 a.m.
You have that. Jessica, is there something that you would like?
Oh, I was interested in two of them, and happy to just serve on one. But one of the ones is the one, Ian, you were mentioning, the rental housing improvement program, just as like a continuation of my work in the housing study process that we just went through for the Planning Commission. And the other one is the small business assistance program, because I coach small businesses in my job, and I think it'd be a really good fit.
Why don't you take the small business then? And unless Ian. Yes.
Yes, please. If you would prefer the rental housing one, I am happy to give it to you. Not give it to you. I'm happy to not take that one. That's absolutely, yeah, for sure. It sounds like you have more experience in it than I do anyways, so.
Okay, so Daniel's set and Jessica is set.
On rental housing or on business?
Which one?
You pick, Jessica.
I'll go with the rental housing, sure.
Okay. So Ian, do you have a preference?
Do you and I want to do capital again, or I'll do it again? Do you want to join it with me?
Sure.
And then is there still one?
Yeah, there's small business assistance. Tim?
Oh,
Yeah, I can switch to that. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So may I just read it back, make sure I got it right, please?
Mm-hmm.
So it's Liz and Ian on the Capital Grant Review Board, Jess on rental housing, Tim on small business, and Daniel on traffic safety.
Yes.
Great.
Everybody happy?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Committee and board appointments. All right, we've been asked to fill one vacancy on the Brattleboro Housing Partnership Board and one vacancy on the Town Arts Committee. Let's talk about the Housing Partnership Board first. Alicia Underwood has volunteered. Shall we vote to make that appointment?
Yeah, I could nominate Alicia Underwood.
Yeah, you do that, Tim. Great.
I hereby nominate Alicia Underwood.
Great. Alicia Underwood has been nominated for the Brattleboro Housing Partnership Board. Shall we all take a vote on that? All in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. 5-0. Okay, now Eli K. Coughlin Galbraith has volunteered for the Town Arts Committee. So the tricky part here is that after this appointment, we still won't have enough Arts Committee members for that committee to resume meeting. And so I think what we should be considering is wondering about the mission of this committee and whether it's needed. But I think we should ask the town, and we should ask Peter if we can study that mission and any other committees that are not very well employed, to see if there could the town might advise us that whether or not they're obsolete or inactive. So I say we should take two actions, really. One, to appoint this person, and two, to ask Peter to look into the overall question. What do you think?
I think something has to happen with recruitment, kind of talking it up and having a general discussion of what should happen with the committee. I certainly support the mission of the committee. absolutely. But I just want to figure out how we can make it vibrant and relevant.
Jessica, did you have?
I what's listed as the committee's duties is what I do in my day-to-day job. So I'm a big fan of the relevance of the Arts Committee, but it's a job. So I think reviewing what the priorities are, I think would be really great.
Great. So let's do both things. Yes, Tim?
Well, I was also going to say there is some confusion around the community because we have the Town Arts Fund. So we just, going forward, we have to just make sure we articulate the difference between those two things. And Peter,
Yes, Peter.
sorry, I did it again.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be interrupting you. What I was going to say was just that we'll be sure to do, if you all want us to do this piece of work, which it seems like you're leaning towards. I've heard 3 of you show interest in this. So if the 5 of you say, yes, let's do this, then we'll bring back to you a staff report that'll address these things. You know, what has it done historically? What is it charged with doing? You know, what do we know about issues that have arisen and related to confusion or obsolescence? You know, so that you then get, you know, some information to work with and decide whether you want to go further with us, with the community, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, you know, in the best of worlds, we could have a more revigorated committee with a clear mission and duties.
Right.
Yeah.
So would someone like to nominate Alicia?
I would love to nominate Eli Coughlin Galbraith.
Oh, that's it. Yes. Great. All right. So let's take a vote. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
That's 5-0, none opposed. Thank you very much. And then do we have the requisite number of head nods for?
Yeah, I guess what I would say on that is I think I understand what you're looking for, and we as staff can generate a piece of work that helps you have that conversation, unless you need any further conversation about it right now to give me guidance.
Anyone else have any more to say on that subject?
I just want to say that I think some of the no, I'm not going to say it. I'm excited to see what you guys produce.
Okay.
Okay, that's very good. I'm sorry to say it's time to go. Does anyone have a motion that they'd like to make at this time?
Someone's going to take it from you, Liz.
I know.
Who's going to?
I think it's Tim's
pass the
turn.
baton?
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Great. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Thank you to all. Thank you to Peter. Thank you to town staff, reporters. Thank you to Congressman Welch. Good night.
Good night.